What are the rumor mills currently saying about this Red Sox team? Where are they at? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin, and thank you very much for clicking on this video. Hey, last night we officially reached the halfway point in our Movember Foundation goal. That is an incredible feat, so thank you all very much, those of you who donated, but we're still only halfway there. We've got a few days left in November, and if we hit the $3,000 mark this month, I will be giving away 2 tickets to opening day 2026 to one person who donates, so make sure you get in on that action and click the link in the description below. Anyways, it's been a little bit of an abnormally slow offseason, even by MLB standards, doesn't it? At least it feels like that. It felt like this time last year, there were at least substantiated rumors about, where Juan Soto was meeting with and all that good stuff. This year, it's been kind of radio silence, especially on the Red Sox part of thing. I mean, the only real news that we've got in terms of actual moves being made is Josh Naylor yesterday going to the Seattle Mariners, which is hopefully good news for the Red Sox, as it takes the Mariners out of the running for any of those corner infielder players now, so that's at least a good thing. But where else do the Red Sox stand? Well, it doesn't mean that there's not any rumors going on about this Red Sox team. There's a couple that we need to talk about. One of them, I would say relatively in the bad realm, and the other one, I would say relatively in the good realm. And of course, as we always do on this channel, let's start with the bad news. And that bad news has everything to do with the speculation surrounding Alex Bregman right now. Recently, Chris Cotillo of Mass Live went on the Foul Territory podcast and talked about the Red Sox chances of Alex Bregman. Here's what he had to say. Quote, "I think that Red Sox fans think it's a lock that he comes back and a guarantee. I think that it is very much up in the air. Obviously, he's a guy they enjoyed having for a year, but I think some team is going to get into silly territory to put themselves over the edge. Like a Seattle, which I don't think is the case anymore, but this was before Josh Naylor was signed, or Detroit or something like that, and gives him a 6-year deal or extends to a 7-year deal to secure the player without the qualifying offer attached. I think the Red Sox are going to be disciplined with that. I don't think that it's going to be a blank check as much as they loved him, and I think they could get outbid." I'll be honest here, I don't really know where Chris Cotillo is coming from with I think Red Sox fans think it's a guarantee. From everything I've heard from you guys, from everything I've said on this channel, I actually think we all understand that it's pretty far from a guarantee, right? That we said coming into this offseason that there's a real chance that the Red Sox don't have Alex Bregman in 2026. So we want the Red Sox to have Alex Bregman in 26, but we all understand free agency and we all understand the Red Sox recently in free agency, right? I always go back to this Xander Bogaerts analogy, and it's certainly not anything kind of a perfect analogy by any means, right? Xander was a much different case, but it was sort of a similar situation coming into free agency where it's this veteran, aging player that feels like he should be on the Red Sox long term, but we know that the Red Sox have this limit on him. We know the Red Sox aren't going to go the extra mile to get Xander Bogaerts back, and ultimately that's ended up what happened, right? He got this sort of Hail Mary offer that the Red Sox just couldn't or wouldn't match. And I think it's a similar situation with Alex Bregman, and I don't know whether that's Henry closing his purse strings a little bit and saying, look, I don't want to spend this much on this guy, or if it's Breslow's analytical model saying you shouldn't spend that much on this guy, but I do think there's a limit. I think everyone here understands that there's a limit to this, but he's not the only one talking about the fact that Bregman might not be back next season. Rob Bradford went on WEEI last week and actually said something very similar to what Chris Cotillo was saying on Foul Territory, and he actually gave some odds as to where he thinks the Red Sox stand in this Bregman sweepstakes, and he's saying it's less than 50%. Again, he went back to that qualifying offer. He went back to the fact that the Red Sox have this sort of not ability, but I would say limitation on what they're going to spend on Alex Bregman, and he believes that because of the qualifying offer and because of that, the teams are going to be much more aggressive this offseason than they were last offseason. He thinks that the Red Sox are going to try and play the same game with Bregman, that they're going to try and wait him out, that they're going to try and sit there and say, look, we don't think you're going to get a better offer than this, and we're going to wait until you realize that to sign with us, and then ultimately someone's going to give him a better offer. And I think that's realistically what could genuinely end up happening here with Bregman. I think think we could see the Red Sox sit there and say, look, we're going to give you a 4-year deal, no opt-outs, nothing like that. We're just going to sign you here for 4 years. That's going to be our maximum offer. We're going to leave that on the table, and then you come back to us, let's say in January or end of December, wherever it may be, and you tell us whether or not you got a better offer, because we don't think you'll get one, right? And I do think he'll get a better offer than that. So I understand where Rob Bradford is coming from here, but honestly, it just kind of sucks, doesn't it? I mean, this season, you didn't trade Devers because of Alex Bregman. I think ultimately you traded Devers because of egos from both sides, mainly egos from this front office. Specifically, I think egos from this ownership group, but you also did kind of trade him because of Bregman, right? If you hadn't signed Bregman, that probably never would have happened with Rafael Devers, or would have happened later down the road where there maybe would have been a different conversation about it. Now you're potentially losing both Bregman and Devers, and all of a sudden you're starting back at square one. I get it, and I understand the concerns about Alex Bregman that Red Sox fans may have over the course of, let's say, a 4 or 5 year deal, but at the same time too, your goal next season is to take a step forward, is to be a better team than you were in 2025, and it feels like in order to do that, you need to start with Bregman and then build up. Figure out how to get to your team you were last year, and then figure out where to go from there. Losing Bregman kind of puts you behind the 8 ball a little bit, right? On paper, it does make you a worse team than you were in 2025, even if you do sign an Alonso or a Schwarber or whoever, which we're going to talk about in a second. So to me, I hate it, but I kind of understand where these guys are coming from. What I will say is I wouldn't sit here and make any declarations based on this. One, these are more opinionated than they are report-based, right? These are guys who understand what's going on in the Red Sox organization, but this is more so based on what they've done in the past and what they think the strategy for Bregman is. Over the course of this offseason, I've said it before, I'll say it again, it's going to feel like this roller coaster ride with Bregman. There are going to be weeks and months where we feel like, hey, there's no shot the Red Sox bring Bregman back. Or right now where it feels like, there's probably a higher chance they don't than they do. And there are going to be weeks and months and potentially even the rest of the offseason where the Red Sox feel like they are going to sign Alex Bregman. And that's just simply how it goes when you've got a guy like Scott Boras at the helm, right? He's going to twist and manipulate. He's going to make it sound like that 1 week they're in, 1 week they're out. And ultimately, the only time we're actually going to know whether or not the Red Sox are invested in this guy is whether or not he comes back to this team. So take all this with a grain of salt, but it is something to keep in the back of your head, this sort of limitation that the Red Sox have put on themselves. But it's not all doom and gloom about the Red Sox not spending money. We do have some relatively positive reporting here, and that comes from, once again, Chris Cotillo based on Pete Alonso. Because while we talked a lot about how the Red Sox love Schwarber, and Chris Cotillo himself has talked a lot about how the Red Sox love Schwarber, there may be a chance that they prefer Pete Alonso over Schwarber. In Chris Cotillo's report on Thursday, he said, quote, "At the outset of the offseason, a well-connected industry source with knowledge of Boston's thinking didn't think the Red Sox would be a major player for Alonso. This week, however, word is there are some in Red Sox inner circle here that prefer Alonso to Kyle Schwarber, using the reasoning that Alonso doesn't have that qualifying offer attached to like Schwarber does, which could mean that Alonso would cost simply dollars for the Red Sox, which, I mean, for the Red Sox point of view is obviously a positive over Kyle Schwarber. And I think one thing that needs to be mentioned here that wasn't specifically mentioned in Chris Cotillo's article, but I think is kind of understood overall, is that Alonso's going to be on a shorter deal. I don't really know how many years Schwarber's going to get. I think he'll probably end up in the 3, 4, 5 range, but Alonso's probably going to be right in there as well. First baseman in Major League Baseball, unless it's like an extension of a Vladimir Guerrero Jr., don't really get super long contracts at the Major League level in general. I mean, the only one who's gotten more than a 5-year deal recently is Freddie Freeman, who went to the Dodgers. Even Josh Naylor, who's 2 years younger than Pete Alonso and much better defensively, got a 5-year deal from the Seattle Mariners, and that was either the best option available on the table or it was the one that he preferred, right? For Pete Alonso, who's 2 years older, who profiles out and who has openly admitted already this offseason that he's willing to play a DH role because he's not exactly a fantastic defender, I could see this being a shorter term deal. I think that's something the Red Sox would be all over, right? 3 or 4 or 5 years for Pete Alonso could be really, really appealing for this Red Sox team. And to be honest with you, I don't really know where I stand on which one of these guys I prefer, right? I don't think the Red Sox know where they stand on which guy they prefer here, because both these guys are going to be incredibly beneficial to the Red Sox. Both these guys are kind of exactly what the Red Sox have been missing over this last year, right? The reason why they weren't able to go further into the playoffs or secure a better spot coming into the playoffs was because they were kind of missing that true power bat, and both these guys kind of do that. In my opinion, I think ultimately, I kind of think Pete Alonso would end up being the better fit for where this Red Sox team is currently at, but I do think Kyle Schwarber would be the bigger overall impact bat. So to me, I think that's what it's going to come down to, right? It's going to come down to, one, which one of these guys is going to be more affordable, and I think that would be with every team in Major League Baseball, but two, which one's the better fit for this current club, and I think that ultimately does end up being Alonso. I also can't get that guy Kazuma out of my head. I just keep thinking about how impactful he could be to a Red Sox team, but I'm also kind of thinking that might be an alternative to Bregman more than an alternative to Alonso or Schwarber. So ultimately, I think it's cool that they're being attached to both of these guys right now. Regardless, I know this isn't like substantial news or really like a credible, like specific link to one of these guys, although I will say the Alonso one is pretty interesting because it's the first time we've heard that the Red Sox could very well be legitimately interested in Pete Alonso. What I ultimately think this is doing is reinforcing the idea that the Red Sox are big game hunting this offseason, right? That they're not sitting on the peripheral, sort of scouting out these guys who are under the radar like we've seen in the past. Some of these guys who, haven't put up the best seasons recently, but hey, if everything goes right, maybe this is a guy that could turn the Red Sox around. It feels like they're smack dab in the middle of the big game, right? It feels like they're sitting there saying, we don't want the 1-year deal for a Jorge Polanco or a Eugenio Suarez. We want the certified stud in Alonso or Schwarber. And to me, that's kind of why we're not seeing a ton of really big Red Sox rumors or reports so far this offseason, because a lot of these guys, they take time to develop. A lot of these guys, they sit there with a whole bunch of different stuff that they have to go through, and you don't really hear a ton about them until things start to really heat up, and then all of a sudden it's like for 3 days, it's like, okay, the Red Sox are in, the Red Sox are out, the Red Sox are in, the Red Sox are out, and then boom, they end up with somebody. So I think that might be why we're not hearing a ton of it, but it does get me a little bit excited, right? To me, it just reiterates the fact the Red Sox are looking for a legitimate big bat, and I still think Alex Bregman is on their radar. Now, to me, I think a lot of people are sitting there saying it feels like it's going to be one or the other, right? It's either going to be Bregman, Alonso, or Schwarber. But in my opinion, I think it could actually be both, and I think the Red Sox kind of agree with that, and this is the quote I'm going to leave you guys with in this video to digest a little bit, because Breslow was asked straight up about the idea of signing two of these guys as opposed to just one, or specifically signing Bregman and then somebody else. His quote was, "We could. I think we're going to be open to every conceivable path to improving the team, specifically what that looks like or who the names are that fill those roles. I think we'll see how the offseason plays out." Obviously, he's not going to openly say we're signing two of these guys, but he's certainly leaving the door open for it. So let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think? What do you think about the Alonso news? Who do you prefer, Schwarber or Alonso? And what do you think about this Bregman conversation? Do you think you're starting to see the cracks build up in a Bregman offseason, or do you think this is just simply initial opinions from these beat reporters and things are going to change pretty quickly? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this one. Helps out a ton. Best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the red seats.